My name is Joseph. To every new soul finding this search tonight, I offer you a sincere welcome. We are a community bound by a single purpose: to follow the trail of truth, no matter how faint it becomes. We walk this path with respect, with careful steps, and with a commitment to the facts. If you wish to support this journey, please consider subscribing. It is a simple, free act of joining our quiet pursuit. Your presence here strengthens our resolve to look deeper, to ask the difficult questions, and never to forget the human heart at the center of every mystery. The conflict is clear. The truth is still out there, hidden in the silence. Where do we look for it next? Tonight, we return to silence. A silence that has lasted for 22 months. It is the silence of a Tennessee forest in winter. The silence of a bedroom that no longer knows the sound of a teenage boy's breath. The silence that follows a single, shattering question: where is Sebastian Rogers? But in the void left by that silence, a terrible noise has grown. It is not the noise of search parties or barking dogs. It is the noise of human conflict. A roaring, angry, divisive noise that threatens to drown out everything else. This is the story of a disappearance that became a war. A war fought not with weapons, but with words, with suspicions, and with an endless, aching grief turned outward into blame. Our story does not begin on the night Sebastian vanished. To understand the storm, we must first understand the clouds that gathered long before. At the center are two houses, two families, fractured by a history we can only glimpse through court documents and hardened feelings. On one side, the home where Sebastian lived with his mother, Katie, and her husband, Chris. On the other hand, the world of his father, Seth. Between them, a chasm. A conflict so deep and so persistent that those who observe it say a shocking thing: not even the disappearance of a child could bring them together. This is the tinder-dry landscape onto which a single theory sparked a wildfire. A private investigator, looking in from the outside, offered his opinion. He looked at the constant conflict, the warring households. He saw not a crime scene, but a pressure cooker. His conclusion was psychological, not criminal. He believed Sebastian had eloped. He was on overload. The stress, the investigator theorized, was simply too much for the teenage boy to bear. So he fled. He walked away from the noise and into the quiet, cold night. In a different case, this might be seen as a tragic but straightforward possibility. A teenager is overwhelmed, seeking escape. But here, in this case, those words were not just a theory. They were a lit match. Because the public was already watching. And the public had already chosen sides. Open your phone. Scroll through the posts. You will see them, clear as day. The battle lines are drawn with hashtags. Hashtag Team Seth. Hashtag Team Katie. Two armies, armed with keyboards, fighting over the ruins of a family. For those standing with the father, the investigators' words were a confirmation. They were proof. Proof that the home Sebastian shared with his mother was a place of unbearable pressure. They speak of strict rules. They whisper about cameras they believe watched a boy's every move. They point to visits from Child Protective Services, to reports filed, to a climate of control. They see the stepfather as a looming, authoritarian figure. To them, Sebastian wasn't just a missing boy. He was a refugee fleeing a silent war. His disappearance was the final, desperate act of escape. For those standing with the mother, the same theory is a knife to the heart. It is character assassination. A cruel attempt to blame a grieving mother for the ultimate loss. They watch the father's media appearances, his passionate, angry interviews. They see not a desperate parent, but a strategist. They accuse him of turning his son's tragedy into a circus, of partnering with online personalities to shape a narrative that paints him as the only true victim. They see his grief as a performance, his anger as a weapon. In their eyes, he is not searching for his son, he is prosecuting his ex-wife. And caught in the middle, lost in the crossfire of hashtags and hatred, is the simple, vanishing figure of a boy. Let us now step back from the noise. Let us enter a quieter room, where we deal not in feelings, but in facts. Let us listen to a voice that cuts through the storm with the cold, clear precision of a scalpel. It is the voice of a host who has studied this case for every one of those 22 months. She acknowledges the conflict. She does not look away from the CPS reports, from the tension that is a matter of public record. The problems in the home, she agrees, are real. But then she offers a second possibility, one that is equally chilling in its simplicity. What if, she asks, Sebastian left for a different reason? Not to flee from someone, but to go to someone? What if he slipped out that night to meet a friend? An acquaintance? What if his departure was not an act of despair, but of anticipation, a teenage secret that ended in unimaginable tragedy? This is not an excuse. It is an expansion of the map. It moves the story beyond the walls of the home and into the wider, darker world. Now we must confront the single most powerful piece of evidence used to lock the story inside those walls. It is repeated like a mantra in 1,000 online comments. Not one camera caught him leaving. The statement is meant to be a full stop. A fact so solid it ends all debate. If the cameras did not see him, then he never left the property. Therefore, the answer to the mystery lies within the home. It is a logic loop that has trapped the public imagination. But what if the logic is flawed? What if the very foundation of that claim is cracked? The host reveals a crucial, and often buried, piece of the investigation. The FBI, in its meticulous way, did not simply accept the presence of cameras as an answer. They tested it. They asked, given the placement of these cameras, their angles, the pitch-black hour of the night, and the dark clothing a teenager might wear, was it even possible for them to see a person leaving? Could someone moving carefully, sticking to shadows, avoid their electronic gaze? The results of those tests are not the stuff of dramatic television. They are technical. They are quiet. And they suggest a sobering truth. It was entirely possible. The cameras, the silent witnesses we trust so completely, could have missed him. This is not speculation. It is a forensic analysis. And then, we have a witness that cannot be swayed by anger or partisan belief. A witness that speaks only in scent. A dog. A scent-specific canine worked the property in the early, desperate hours. This animal did not follow theories or listen to online debates. It followed a smell. And that smell told a story. It led from the front door, around the side of the house, across the back fence, through a neighbor's yard, and out onto a quiet lane called Kellen Lane. This was not a random path. It was a route. A chosen path. A trail that wound through shadows and backyards, avoiding the open street, avoiding the illuminated cones of porch lights. It was the path of someone who did not want to be seen. Think about that for a moment. A dog's nose points down a hidden trail. FBI tests say the cameras could have been avoided. Suddenly, the ironclad statement, "Not one camera caught him," does not prove he never left. It only proves the cameras did not see him. And those are two very, very different things. This revelation should change everything. It should shatter the echo chamber and force a new conversation. But the war is too loud. The trenches are too deep. The online battlefield rages, more furious than ever. The comments are windows into broken hearts and hardened minds. One side writes, "They know where he is. The stepfather had a custody hearing for his daughter just days later. The timing is everything. This was about getting Sebastian out of the picture." The anger is palpable, a conviction burned into belief. The other side fires back. "He's a media addict. If he spent half the energy actually searching the woods instead of doing interviews with every YouTube channel, maybe he'd have found something. He's exploiting his own son's tragedy." The disdain is thick, a shield against sympathy. And a weary voice from the middle types, "Hold on. If there were all these cameras inside the house watching him, as some people claim, then where is the footage of a crime? You can't say the house is a prison of surveillance, and also say a crime happened there with no video proof. It doesn't work both ways." The parents themselves have become prisoners of this narrative. Their every action, every moment of silence, is twisted into proof of guilt. Katie and Chris are criticized for not attending public vigils. Their absence is seen not as private grief or a need to avoid a toxic spectacle, but as the cold behavior of people with something to hide. Seth is criticized for attending too many vigils, for speaking too often to the press. His visibility is seen not as a desperate father keeping his son's name alive, but as the calculated performance of a manipulator. They are in an impossible trap. To show grief is to perform. To hide grief is to confess. They are damned by a public that watches their every breath, searching for a scripted flaw. This is the modern agony. Your worst nightmare is not just your own. It is public property. Your tears are analyzed. Your silence is dissected. Your anger is weaponized against you. And so we arrive at the chilling, central cliffhanger of this entire, sorrowful case. The great, yawning unknown that swallows all our theories whole. We have a boy with autism, a young man from a community statistically more likely to wander, to flee overwhelming sensory or emotional situations. We have a home environment filled with a conflict so loud it has now engulfed the nation. We have a possible scent trail, laid down by a dog, suggesting a deliberate, hidden departure. We have no physical evidence of a struggle, of violence, within the home. We have no verified sightings of him, alive and well, starting a new life somewhere else. We have no body, no resting place, no physical proof of an ending. Every path we walk leads to a wall. If he ran away, overwhelmed and scared, how has a teenage boy with no resources survived for nearly 2 years, completely undetected, in the modern world? Where is he? How is he eating? Who is hiding him, and why? If he left to meet someone, a friend, an online contact, a person he trusted, who was that person? What happened at that meeting? Why has that person never come forward, not even with an anonymous clue? If the answer does somehow lie within the home, then where is the evidence? How was a scene so perfectly sanitized? How have multiple searches, multiple investigations found nothing to point a definitive finger? The war between the households is no longer just a sad sidebar to this mystery. It has become a mystery. It is a fog of accusation so thick and so choking that any real clue, any fragile piece of truth, would get lost in it. It diverts the energy of thousands from constructive search efforts to vicious social media battles. It transforms the mission of finding a missing child into a crusade to destroy the character of the other side. The key figures, Katie, Chris, Seth, are trapped in a hell of their own making and our making. They are both victims and prime suspects. Their pre-existing conflict, once a private heartache, now provides the fuel for the public story. We watch them, and we think we know the plot. But we must ask the dangerous, uncomfortable question: who does this war really serve? Does it serve Sebastian? Does the constant digging into his parents' flaws, the endless analysis of their past fights, bring us one step closer to finding him? Or does it simply satisfy our own human hunger for drama, for a clear hero and a clear villain? Does this public division create a shield for someone else? Is there a person, a stranger or an acquaintance, watching this family tear itself apart on a national stage and thinking, "Good. Let them fight. Is no one looking at me?" What potential witness, holding a single, vital piece of the puzzle, a car they saw, a figure in the woods, a strange conversation, would ever dare step forward into this hurricane? Would you? Would you risk being torn apart by one side or the other, accused of being a paid liar or a heartless troll, just for telling what you saw? The most haunting possibility of all is this: the greatest obstacle to finding Sebastian Rogers may no longer be the dense Tennessee woods, the cold rivers, or the passage of time. The greatest obstacle may be us. It may be our need for a story that makes sense. Our refusal to sit in the uncomfortable, silent void of not knowing. Our compulsion to fill that void with a villain, any villain, so the world feels less random and less terrifying. We have chosen the parents as the main characters in our tragedy, because the alternative, that a boy can simply vanish into the night, taken by chance or by a stranger we cannot name, is too profoundly unsettling to bear. The search for Sebastian is now two parallel investigations. One is physical. Men and women still walk the woods, still check the waterways, their eyes on the ground, hoping for a scrap of fabric, a piece of bone, a silent answer in the dirt. The other investigation is digital, psychological, and tribal. It is conducted in comment sections and live streams. It excavates not the forest floor, but the past. It seeks not a body, but a motive. It is fueled by a grief that has curdled into rage. The first search may yet find its answer. The second only digs deeper graves for the living. Tonight I asked you to step back from the war. I asked you to quiet the noise in your own mind. Look at the facts we can agree on, the few solid pieces in this swirling storm. A boy is missing. He left in the night. The how and the why are shadows. The conflict around him is a fact, but it is not necessarily the cause. The anger is real, but it is not evidence. We must find a way to search for Sebastian that is not about choosing a side in a family war, but about choosing the side of a missing child. We must be willing to follow the dog's trail, not the mob's. We must be willing to accept that the truth might be sadder and more complicated than any hashtag can capture. Subscribe to this channel if you believe in this different kind of search. A search that values light over heat. A search that respects the family's agony without being consumed by its anger. A search that, above all else, never forgets that the most important person in this story is the one who is not here to speak for himself. The conflict is clear. The truth is still out there, hidden in the silence. Where do we look for it next?